my buddy Tirso, he messaged me actually while I was in Japan. I was on my way back, and he messaged me and he said, I got to talk about something. There's a big problem on the roadways. Have you noticed it? And that is people driving around with their headlights off. Daytime running lights on, headlights off. That's fine if it's daytime. But they're doing this at night. And oh man, he mentioned this to me and I went, man, you're right. I see that all the time. And by the way, Tirso, he's a great dude. I've never had him on the show, and I really should bring him on the show. He's been begging me to bring him on the show for years, and we need to make this happen here. But he's the guy at the intro of the show, the guy yelling, "We were in there!" That one, right at the very intro of the show. I know you've heard it. That's Tirso in his drift car, his IS300 drift car, which he's doing some very cool 2JZ spoolie boy turbo stuff on it right now. So Tirso, I'm looking forward to that. But I got to talk about this though, because, and I guarantee you've seen this. If you're listening on the radio, you may look around even now. This show, of course, airs at 9 a.m. on AM 1460, The Answer, but it re-airs throughout the weekend as well, and even into the evening on some other stations. So you may actually look around and find this if you're driving around right now and it's nighttime. And so the problem is people driving around with their daytime running lights on, right? That's a problem. Why is that a problem? Well, for one, it's unsafe. It is super unsafe, because here's the thing. When your daytime running lights are on and nothing else, that means that your taillights are not illuminated. You ever come across a car on the highway, you're driving at night, back of the car is dark. You can't even hardly see the thing until you're right up on it. And thank God these cars have reflectors on them. Like, thank God reflectors are actually mandated on some of these cars, because that's been the only way I've spotted these guys with a reasonable distance to slow down or avoid them, because my headlights are hitting the reflectors on the back of the car because the taillights are completely dark. And the thing is, you will notice these are always new cars. Why is it always new cars? It's not some old jalopy. It's not some crusty old Corolla. No, it's always new cars. And you're probably thinking to yourself, you already know the reason, and you're probably right. It's for one, because these new cars are full of screens on the interior. So you get in your old car, right? Get in my 1986 AE86. Get in my S2000, which people are telling me is an old car now. Actually, they're telling me it's a weird Miata. I forgot. Yeah, that's right. It's a weird Miata. But anyway, so get in either of those cars and try to drive at night. And the problem you will find is that the interior illumination, the gauge cluster and all this stuff isn't illuminated. The S2000's a little different, and I'll explain that in a bit. But you get in my AE86 and drive it. Not that you could right now because it doesn't run. But say it did. And you get in at night and drive it without the headlights. You are not going to be able to see the gauge cluster at all. It is completely dark. It is completely unilluminated. You will see nothing. You will notice it the very second. Well, for one, if you're driving in any place that doesn't have streetlights, you'll notice it because you just can't see in general. But in the cities now, everything is so well illuminated at night. It's hard to say that, well, it's easier to make a mistake here. And but you get in and you won't be able to read the instruments. All right. That's your instruments, as if it's an airplane, the speedometer and stuff. You won't be able to read that. And that's going to be a dead giveaway. You get into a new car and it has a screen-based gauge cluster. It has a big screen in the center console area, and it's all well illuminated. In fact, it's over illuminated, and there's oftentimes a reason for that. My S2000 is a good example. My S2000 has a digital gauge cluster, and for being a 2001 model, it has a digital gauge cluster, kind of more of an old school LCD look to it. It looks like calculator numbers on it, kind of. And what you will notice when you get in that car is that gauge cluster is obnoxiously bright. If you try to drive with the headlights off, the cluster's bright because when the headlights are off, the car, it doesn't have any sensors to know when it's light out. It's too old for that. The car assumes that the headlights are off, therefore it must be daytime, therefore you must have direct sunlight on the screen. So it makes that screen, it cranks that brightness up all the way, because in direct sunlight, you need that to still have the LCD be legible. So if you get in at night, try to drive without your headlights, that screen is obnoxiously bright. Not only that, your backlighting on things like your HVAC, that'll still be off. That won't be on. In these modern cars, they have a compound problem. For one, they have screens in the center cluster, the gauge cluster area. They have screens in the center stack. But those screens oftentimes are automatically illuminated based off of a light sensor. Case in point, my 2024 WRX. It has an analog tachometer and an analog speedometer, but it's got a screen between them, and it's got a screen in the center stack. I've told you how I feel about that screen in the center stack. I hate it. I want my climate control buttons back. I want them to be physical. Anyway, the thing is, what it will do, if I turn the daytime running lights on, so I go to daytime running lights position, well, it'll light up the daytime running lights in the front, but not the main headlights, so it's not projecting light as far. And then at night, it will automatically adjust the brightness of the gauge cluster and the screens because it has a light sensor. It'll adjust that from being really bright. Those will be bright during the daytime, just like my old S2000. Well, at night, it'll bring them down so they're not totally shining in your face, blinding you. But the problem is it will do that regardless of the headlight position switch. So you can have your headlights off, you can have your headlights in daytime running light position, or they can be on. It doesn't matter. The gauge cluster brightness is set based on a light sensor. So that means you could have the daytime running lights on. The gauges are just as lit as they would be if the headlights were on. It doesn't matter. And they're not blowing your eyes up. They're not flashing you really bright because the light sensor has said, oh, it's nighttime. I'm going to dim the brightness on these. The backlight will still be on, but I'm going to dim it a little bit. This is a huge problem. This is why we have cars. You see it. Drive around tomorrow night, tonight, whatever. It doesn't matter. You will see a car driving through the city with just the daytime running lights on, the headlights off, and the driver's oblivious. And the thing I hate too is I see these people and I try to flash them, say, hey, your headlights are off. And they just look at me. Sometimes they even give me the middle finger. They're like, why are you flashing me, bro? Because your headlights are off. Learn how to use your car first, then drive safe. That is an important part of this. You've got to actually have those headlights on. And this drives me nuts, and I can't understand why manufacturers have done this auto-dimming stuff now. It's terrible. Anyway, thanks for listening to the Automotive ADHD Show. We'll talk to you next week, right here.